Leadership. We all know that leadership is important. However, the question is, how do you actually present? How do you perform? How do you do leadership? What is the real essential leadership that we need to provide? And we have an expert on the matter with us here today. Hello and welcome, Marc Inzelstein.
Thank you, Niels. Great to be with you.
Thank you very much for taking the time. And we're getting straight into it. You wrote the book about essential leadership. And there is a topic in there because most people will say, as a leader, you need to be tough and you need to be tough on the people and you need to tell them, do this and do that. And when I look at your book, there is a rather different take on it. You say practicing love, L-O-V-E, in turbulent times. And of course, my question here is, what was your core motivation to write this book in these times? Because many people, especially today, say, when I look around, I see all of this very straightforward, deliberately extremely hard people all over the media. So, what is your approach to? But first, what was your core motivation to write this book right now?
Thank you, Niels. Really, really great question. So I've been doing this work of executive advisory for 25 years across the world, working with large organizations, some startups with a lot of different types of leaders. And I love my work and I love the people that I work with. So I do. So the work love, the word love comes into it for me from the beginning because you can only do a great job when you really care about the people you work with. And I've watched over the last 10 years, especially, but even worse since COVID, the immense struggle that I see leaders facing every day. The world has just become so much more complicated, so much more difficult. We used to talk about VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. We've moved into a world now which is experts refer to as Barney, brittle, anxious, nonlinear, and incomprehensible. And leaders are dealing with no one has been to school for this. You could have an MBA or a PhD, it doesn't matter. It's just
Hmm.
we're dealing with realities that far surpass what we've been taught to handle. And so watching the people I work with struggle, they may be performing very well if you look at their metrics and how but they're inside they're struggling. And their health is suffering. Burnout has become a syndrome with the World Health Organization. Anxiety has become an epidemic across, corporate Europe and corporate America, across the
Hmm.
world, in fact. And so I care about the humans. I also care about the leadership, meaning I want organizations to be successful. And I believe that they can happen together, but it has to happen differently. And so I wrote the book to explore that theme, drawing on my many years of experience and also a lot of research, speaking to a lot of people. And I believe we need to get to a different level of leadership, which I call essential leadership. So that was my core motivation to write this book, Niels.
Excellent, excellent. So when people now say, okay, this seems to be pretty important in today's times, when I buy the book, the L-O-V-E, what do I sign up for? What is it? Because many people will buy books to say, okay, look, I have a certain situation and I need help with that. And the question they have is, what is in for me? So what is your that's in it for you with that book?
Understood. A great question. So yes, of course, it spells the word love, but it stands for a paradigm which I've developed over the years, which I believe is a very powerful paradigm, which can help us as leaders and as humans not to just be more sustainable, also be healthy, but be better, more effective, more impactful leaders.
Mm,
So the L stands for letting go. I'll get into that, what that means if you want. The O for oneness, the V for vision, and the E for energy. And these four dimensions work together to create what I call the essential leader. And it draws on sort of deep well springs of resources that are within us as human beings. We just need to know how to access those resources. And that paradigm works both at the individual level, meaning it works inside of you, but it works also in how you impact your teams and your organizations. So at a high level, that's really what we're talking about.
excellent. Especially when you said letting go. Could you get a bit into this? Because some people say, look, I've tried so hard to let go for many, many years, but things are bothering me more and
Yes,
more every single day. I just
yes.
start the radio, here we go. I start the TV and it continues. Basically, as soon as I get in touch with reality, things are bothering me more each day, and I try to let go so hard that actually letting go starts to bother me.
That's
So
very well put.
how can people
Yeah.
actually let go?
It's a really, really great question. It's hard. The first thing we have to recognize is that most of us, especially those of us that have grown up sort of in the business world with as rational thinkers and learned strategic planning, we've learned project management, we've learned all these techniques to make things work. Well, that works to a point, but when things get too complicated, it doesn't work anymore because there's
Mm,
an infinite number of things we can manage at any one time. And today it's more than ever. So the first thing we have to recognize is that we mostly live in the illusion of control. We believe that we can control reality, we can control our teams, we can control organizations. That's actually no longer possible. It was possible at some point, and we all know that those of us that have studied management, that have been working leadership, that the 60s and 70s were largely command and control organizations, and that in the
hmm
80s, 90s, up into today, we've moved to more modern types of organizations where we care about culture, we care about people, we care about connecting, but we never let go of the illusion of control. So interestingly enough, in the 70s, there was a great psychologist called Ellen Langer who wrote a book, wrote a paper about that called The Illusion of Control. And she showed very empirically that control is impossible. It's an illusion. We believe we have much more impact than we actually do.
mm,
And the letting go fundamentally has to happen by first recognizing we control far less than we actually believe. And so what I advise people to do is to recognize they can't control anyone or anything really. We even have trouble controlling ourselves if you come to think about that. To move from control to coherence. Coherence.
hmm
Coherence is a whole different, I'd say, different way of thinking about life and about leadership. Instead of using force, you know, in some instances, you may have to use force in life. You get someone attacks you in the street, you may have to defend yourself, something like
Yeah.
that. But in organizations, force, I believe today has outlived its usefulness. Coherence is about how people function together in purposeful, aligned, harmonious ways.
Mm,
And so when you recognize that you're aiming for coherence, that you're looking to connect at levels from human being to human being, at the level of the head and the heart, you don't seek to control it. You can't control or to let go anymore. It happens naturally because you're
mm,
functioning at a much more, I would say, serene level of consciousness than when you're trying to control people and situations. And so letting go happens when you just recognize I can't control things because that's an illusion. And I'm
mm.
looking for coherence more than control. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's a massive paradigm shift for most people, though, because many people think my whole job is to actually stay in control, but at the same time, they now have to acknowledge that they actually can't.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
There's a saying that a lot of us know that, management is about doing things right, and leadership is about doing the right things.
Mm,
And even management, we say doing things right, it feels like you have to control things. But I say even middle managers today they have to manage projects well. They have to keep things on time and stay within budget. That's all important, but you're dealing with humans. And with humans, the more you exert control, the more you're going to leak energy from the system. The more people are going to
mm,
resist, the more you're going to lose traction, you're going to lose trust. So you've got to go in there with what I call the leadership heart set as much as the leadership mindset. The heart set is about remembering you're dealing with another human. First
yeah.
and foremost, you're not manipulating an object in space and time to get to a result. You are actually working with someone who needs purpose, who needs connection, who needs trust, who needs faith, who needs coaching to get to that next step. And when you
Mm.
do that naturally, coherence starts to happen, teams start to form, trust starts to take place, and then performance starts to soar. And it can really, really transform very quickly when that happens.
Absolutely. Two more questions here. One question, of course, I have to ask. Some people might now look you up as an author, and then they find like massive career, management consultant, partner at a large tech firm, LSE master degrees. And some people will say, look, I'm not much of an academic here. I'm not into these scientific reads. I don't have that massive career. I'm a team leader in a small business here. Is this actually a fit for me? What kind of read can people expect when they open the book?
It's a good question. I've tried to make it very practical. I do use scientific research, but I always bring it back to what's in it for you. And so
Very good.
typically at the end of most chapters, I'll have something called a moment to notice, where I'll turn everything about in the chapter into something you can practice yourself. Because at the end of the day, everything is going to come back to you, the human. How are you
Hmm
starting your day? How are you dealing with difficult situations? What are the practices you can do to find more coherence inside of you, more peace, more tranquility? And how can you access resources of creativity and resilience that are already inside of you? So, yes, there is research, but for people that are into that kind of stuff, I make it very practical. There are case studies of executives I've worked with where the stories, you'll find them very relatable because we all struggle with the same things. with
Hmm.
with imposter syndrome, with trying to manage stuff we can't manage, with letting people down. These are very human, basic human things. And there are ways to deal with that. And we have those resources inside of us. We just have to access them.
Brilliant. I think these are the perfect final words. Just one last question. When people now say, hey, I think Mark will be a really good keynote speaker for our conference, or a great coach, or a great mentor for our organization, how can people get in touch with you?
So the best is on my website, which is essential-leadership.com, or mark at essential-leadership.com. That's the easiest way to reach me.
Brilliant. These are the perfect final words. You see, practicing love, L-O-V-E, might be the solution to the essential leadership issues that you are facing today. At the end of this podcast and at the end of the video cast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Mark, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to see you, Niels. Appreciate your time.